Hey guys, Josh here. Today we are here with xFitcho to reveal our top 10 favourite liveries for the F1 2016 season. We're going to be ranking all the teams from worst to first. We also did a video over on his channel as well, so I'll leave a link to that video and his channel down in the description below. We definitely recommend you guys go and watch that video and subscribe to him. Anyway, how are you?
I'm alright, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Let's get straight into it then. So, of course, this is just our own opinion. You guys can let us know your top 10 down in the comment section below. But let's get straight into it then with my number 10, last place then. We're not including Toro Rosso on this list, but we have decided to include Renault. And Renault are indeed my number 10 on this list. I was hovering between number 9 and number 10 for Renault, but at the last minute, I've changed it to bottom of the list. It's really not the best livery, really, just kind of all black and
it blends into the track.
Exactly. That I don't really need to see any more.
No, and it's number 10 for me as well. Rock bottom. Hopefully they change it. They said it might get changed for Melbourne, and I really hope it ends up with a lot more yellow on the car.
Yeah, because it could be one of probably the best liveries if it got quite a lot of, more yellow on it.
If you look back to like 2010, that Renault with all the yellow was one of the best liveries around. So I'm optimistic about them still, but the livery they have currently, rock bottom. It's last.
And your number 9?
My number 9 is my own team, McLaren. I liked last year's livery, but it's like they've got up last year's livery in Photoshop and like, okay, let's just remove all the colour. Yep, that's good. Oh, actually, let's put a really stupid font for the number. Great. Let's use that for the season. I don't like it. I don't know. It just looks like a toned down version of last year's livery, and it just looks bad.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
It's my number 9 as well. When I first saw it, I thought it was okay. I mean, I wasn't really expecting much, but really as it's gone on, and I've seen more pictures of it actually on track, it really doesn't look great. Like you said as well, the font of their race numbers is a bit, yeah. So yeah, McLaren is number 9 for me, and my number 8 is Mercedes. Of course, some of you might be Mercedes fans, some of you might love that livery, but just for me, I'm not the biggest fan of it. It just, I don't know, the grey, it just doesn't quite go for me really, and they've had that same livery since 2010, and of course, I guess silver, of course, is Mercedes colours. They can't really do much else, but still, a bit uninspiring really, and just, I'm not really the biggest fan of it. So Mercedes is my number 8, but what's yours?
Not the Mercedes. It's finally a little bit different, our list, and I'm sorry, Josh. It's Force India.
Oh.
I don't know, it's a bit bland. There is a little bit of colour in it, but it's just quite dull. I wish they had gone back to sort of 2013. Livery was bright orange, green, and white sort of thing. That was great, but it's really just a bit black and dull now.
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've kind of got to agree, but it's not actually my what we on number 7. My number 7 is actually Manor. Now, this is the one that I think a lot of people really do like, and I was excited about it to start off with because when we saw that shot of the front wing and we heard it might be orange or red or blue, it sounded quite good. But now I've kind of seen it more and more on track, I'm really not the biggest fan of it really, and I don't think the colours really blend that well together. It's not nearly as good as say 2013, or probably their 2014 livery was probably the best. It just kind of seems a bit of a mismatch and just kind of thrown quite a few colours together, and it just doesn't really blend for me. But what's your number 7?
My number 7 is the Mercedes. Again, like you said, it's silver, quite dull. Very similar to the livery they've had their entire time in their return to Formula 1. The only thing that sort of gets it above some of the teams below is the little bit of turquoise from the Petronas, really. It's just quite dull, but the bit of turquoise just makes it a little bit better than it might have been, but still only number 7.
Yeah, maybe if they'd utilised that Petronas a bit more, then maybe, it could have been a bit better. But anyway, my number 6 is Haas. Now, this was a really close one. This whole top 6 is so close, and on a different day I might have put them higher up. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of potential with this Haas livery. To start off with, we thought it was going to be a really cool yellow, design livery. And then we kind of heard reports it was going to be black and grey. But really what they came out of was a really decent livery. Overall it did look really nice. Slightly mismatched, I think, some of the colours, and could have been slightly better, but really, especially when you see it out on track, it does look pretty racy, and you know, it's going to be interesting to see how Haas do this year, and they've got a half decent livery to start their Formula 1 career.
Yeah, my number 6 is exactly the same. Haas, like you just said, it's a pretty decent livery. I like the fact that they splashed a fair bit of color on the front end of the car, but it looks very American, if something can look American, especially with the American flag on the upright on the side of the side pod. It just looks really American. Maybe the back half of the car is a bit dull, but the front end with the bright red sort of puts it above some of the other cars, and overall it's a pretty decent livery, especially with the big Haas scrawled across the side pod.
Yeah, and your number 5?
My number 5 is Williams, and I think it is literally a copy and paste of last season's, but again, it is quite nice, especially with the bright blue and red of the Martini against the white. Really looks nice against the track, and it's quite a solid livery. One of the, since in probably the last 10 years, it's probably not 10 years, since 2010, it's probably been my favorite livery, this sort of white with the Martini compared to what they were running back in the Pastor Maldonado days.
Yeah, I've definitely got to agree with that. Definitely prefer this Williams. But my number 5 is actually Force India. Of course, you had it a lot lower down. But of course, I guess because I'm a Force India fan as well, I like it a bit more. But for the exact same reason you said, you know, I really, really love their kind of 2009 to 2013 kind of bright Indian livery. It really gave them character and looked really, really good on track. And you know, 2014 they kind of took a step backwards with that and kind of went kind of all black really, especially in the second half. You know, 2015 they brought in this livery which has remained the same for 2016, so slightly holding them back on this list is the fact that they've just copied and pasted last year's livery. But you know, the orange and green highlights are really nice, and if they weren't there then it would look a lot worse. So you know, it could be worse really, and it's still a pretty nice livery, and it's still, you know, one of my favourites on the grid, and that's why it's number 5.
Okay, number 4 for me is the Sauber with the bright blue and the bright yellow. It looks quite nice. There's not much to it. It's just sort of two big blobs of colour, but it has colour. That's the important thing. Colour is almost a rarity almost on the F1 grid these days to have a bright coloured car, and therefore it's up in 4th. Not much complexity to it, but it looks nice and it stands out.
Yeah, and my number 4 is Williams, of course. Just again, like you mentioned before, Williams have had kind of awful liveries in the past. You know, I really, really didn't like that kind of blue, the one they had kind of late 2000s, early 2010s. But luckily they changed that, and they have this really nice Martini one. But the effect kind of wears off after you've seen it for the 3rd year in a row. So yeah, that's why Williams is number 4 on my list. And my number 3 on this list was, again, the top 3 are so close, and it's just my opinion, but I think the Sauber is probably number 3. It's a really, really nice livery, of course, like you mentioned. Big blobs of colour, but, you know, it's bright, it's colourful. It's so unlike any other livery we've ever seen in Formula 1, really. And, you know, thanks to Felipe Nasr, we get a bright livery on the grid. Certainly one of the only ones we're seeing in 2016.
So my number 3 is the Scuderia itself, Ferrari, the bright red car, this time with a bit of white on the top of the car, and I personally am a really big fan of this livery. I reckon it looks really, really nice, especially with the white, and especially with that big square red and white Ferrari logo. It almost looks a bit like one of those old-fashioned Marlboro logos, and sort of a flashback to the past, and it just looks really, really cool in my opinion.
And your number 2?
And my number 2, one that you had very, very low earlier on, is the Manor. I reckon it really looks cool. It's brightly coloured. It's a bit of a mismatch, but it just, I don't know, it works for some reason. They're just like, yeah, colour, let's just throw colour on the car. Oh yeah, it doesn't really match that well, but whatever. It's awesome, in my opinion. I don't know, it's weird logic, but I like it.
No, I understand. So 2 liveries left then for me, Red Bull and Ferrari. And my number 1 then is Red Bull. Yes, that's right, their new kind of matte livery looks really, really nice for me. But first of all, I'll talk about the number 2 on my list, of course, which was the Ferrari. Looks pretty nice, really. Like you mentioned, the white, you know, kind of a throwback to the kind of 1970s. Niki Lauda's, of course, championship winning car in 75 and 77. And, you know, overall it does look pretty nice. When I first saw it, I wasn't really a fan of it, but once you see it on track, once you see it out there, you know, arguably winning races in 2016, I think it's going to grow on me even more. Even though Vettel's helmet does blend in with the white, you know, it kind of all adds to the kind of stealth of Ferrari, even though, of course, they have a pretty bright red. You know, the car looks nice as well itself, you know, even as well as the livery. So Ferrari then is my number 2, but my number 1, as I mentioned, is the Red Bull. A really, really nice livery. You know, Red Bull haven't, you know, I've never really liked Red Bull liveries before, but this one really jumped out at me, and, you know, it's really kind of come on strong, and it's just grown on me, really, and that kind of matte finish, and apparently it's this kind of, you know, very high advanced paint, which, you know, gives them a few extra hundredths, thousands of a second per lap, so, you know, a good bit of ingenuity from Red Bull that Williams were trialing out last year, so it does look really, really nice overall. Do like the Red Bull, and you know, maybe if that had a white outline it would look slightly better, but I do really like the dark blue kind of matte kind of base livery that they have, and of course the Red Bull yellow does look very, very nice as well.
Yeah, and if you haven't already figured out, my number 1 is also Red Bull. He sums it up pretty much perfectly already, Josh, but it just looks so nice. Something a bit different with the matte finish, something we haven't seen in, I can't even remember another matte finished car, but it just looks so nice, especially with the Red Bull being outlined in that really bright yellow. It just really stands out, and it just looks so freaking cool on track, and yeah, I just really like that livery. I really, just everything about it just looks so damn cool in my opinion.
Yeah, I've definitely got to agree, and that's our top 10 then favourite liveries, so I think that's pretty much it, unless you have anything else to add.
It would be interesting to see next week what the Toro Rosso livery is, because obviously that hasn't come out yet. I wonder how that'll look. I have high hopes for it, but hopefully it can be something along the lines of Red Bull, but typically it's similar to Red Bull, but a bit toned down. So, you know, it could be a good livery, but yeah.
Yeah, and of course, I think the Toro Rosso is coming out on Monday, and then of course the first day of testing next week is on the Tuesday, so that'll be pretty interesting to see. Hopefully, like you mentioned earlier, Renault are going to be bringing a much brighter, more colourful livery in Melbourne.
Please, Renault, please.
Anyway, I think that's pretty much it then, so there'll be a channel link down to your channel down in the description below. Go and subscribe to him, he's a fantastic YouTuber. We've also done a video as well on your channel that will be out soon.
Yeah, we're doing top 5 current F1 drivers. That will be over on my channel.
Controversy.
Yes, I can already
Go and
see the
send
comments.
all the hate all the way to Australia. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it then. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being on this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.